Welcome back, everyone. On the Perf podcast is brought to you by Atlas Gunworks. I'm Adam Maxwell, your host. With me, my cohort, Mr. Adam Reiser. Adam, say hi to the folks.
Hi, folks.
And get your overlay cards out, folks, because this one's going to be on the Perf. Now, I have a confession to make. I'm not super stoked on this topic. But it was Adam's idea, and it's half his show, so we're going along with it. But Adam really, really wanted to do Q&A. Did your Q&A already air, or is that after this one?
No, it'll air after this one.
So there's another one coming. But he really, really wanted to know what my people who follow my page would ask for questions.
Well, so this was specifically our YouTube channels was the idea. And because we were sitting in a hotel room and needed something else to record.
Yep.
And so we pulled questions off of my YouTube channel. Adam didn't have time nor inclination to pull questions off of his. So we recorded them out of order. So,
yep. And so
let's say this is episode 7. We recorded episode 8 first. But through the magic of podcasting, that's what we did.
I look at questions kind of like I look at emails, right? 2 basic types of email that you write. One is short blurb, 1-sentence answer. And then the other one is a composition. Like somebody will ask me a question and I will give them the most beautiful dissertation that they have ever read in their life. And I don't have a lot in between. So like when people ask questions on my YouTube, I either like hit that thing back right away with, right there in the comments, or it's like, you know what? That is actually an interesting question. I want to do a whole video or a whole episode on that. But, and also because I didn't want to comb through all my videos and find all those questions, I just threw up one of those Ask Me things on my Instagram. And those always hurt my feelings just a little bit because I don't get nearly as many questions as some of the people who I think are cool. And so I'm painfully aware that I have less friends than they do. But I did get some. We certainly have enough for a show here. So I have written them down, and we're going to go through them. Some of these actually probably warrant their own show, but we're going to try and short form give you an answer, a little bit of an ADD overview of some of these topics if you're not ready for a whole show.
Let's say this. Let's say we can give them the 60-second answer, and if there's something that warrants its whole show, we'll just state that when you read the question and be like, this is going to be a whole nother show. Here's the very short version. We will actually cut it very short because otherwise this show will be a compilation of a lot of whole shows.
Oh, absolutely.
And nobody wants to listen to a 5-hour podcast. So.
Nope, nobody does except me. Nope. I listen to one every week, but that's horrible. It takes me all week. But also some of you are going to recognize your questions here. We do actually read your questions. We do actually answer them. Just because we don't answer them today doesn't mean we won't get to them. But
this probably won't air for a month after you asked your question.
Yeah. So we're
sorry.
out there. We're listening, and the more you interact with the show, that definitely gives Reiser and myself energy to continue the show. So like the day that we feel like we're talking into a vacuum is probably the day we pull the plug on it. So the more you hit the ball back and forth with us, the more interactive it's going to be for the whole community.
Yeah, make it tennis, not hitting a ball against a garage.
Okay, so here we go. Question number 1. Is there a style of match you've learned the most from?
Ooh. I would say the style of match I learned the most from was large, open terrain, outlaw 3-gun. And that is because that is a style of the match that I was brought up on. So most of my big, important, learn it by putting your hand on the hot stove style lessons happened in large outlaw 3-gun matches. That came a bit to the detriment of my performance with base stage matches. I do way better when matches hinge on long range and 300-second stages where The name of the game is don't let your problem snowball and wreck your entire stage, as opposed to 30-second base stages where the name of the game is super aggressive perfection.
I would say I would be hard pressed to nail down a style. I think the reason I've stayed in the sport so long and remained so engaged in it is because I learned something and something different from all of the genres that I participate in and the drive to be competitive in them. I mean, I had a range session today, like we were talking in the pre-chat, like I had a range session today with one target. I think I shot like 400 rounds or so inside of an hour, and I'm still learning. Here we are, 15 years later, still learning, and you learn different things. I learn different things, or I get something different out of an indoor USPSA match than I do from a natural terrain 3-gun match, than I do from, a speedball style match or a base style match, 3-gun match, than I get from a tactical shotgun match. Like they all have their own little nuance, and I think it all helps me grow as a competitor, as an action shooting competitor. So I get something from all of them, but I would probably agree with Adam that the most dynamic lessons and the lessons that maybe sting the most are from natural terrain 3-gun matches, because when it goes bad, it goes really bad. And and they also have an air of epic about them that it breaks your heart a little bit to not do well at them. Like if you want, like, just make peace with it, folks. We're going to talk about Iron Man a lot. But like if you did well at Iron Man, I can screw everything else up for the rest of my life. I got 22nd at Iron Man the first time I shot it, and that was maybe like the proudest day of my life, right?
That's pretty good for your first time out, dude.
Right. And I won a 3-Gun Nation Pro Series, or not Pro Series, regional. Was, like, I was like, oh yeah, sweet, whatever. It's just like the epicness of some of these natural terrain matches and the features that they have. They're just larger than life. They're like tall tales. Like, they're just larger than life. So it's cool to do well there, and it also is a bit like watching it like fall through your fingers when something goes bad, because the penalties, there's just so much time on the clock that it's so epic when it actually goes bad. So the most painful lessons, like they'll never do it. I mean, the TISM around cleaning 2011 mags. All right, that didn't come from a Tuesday night USPSA match. That came from a big 3-gun match. Putting your shotgun shells in a cooler. All right, that didn't come from a weekend club match. That came from a big match. Bringing spare guns. All right, didn't come from a Wednesday night. That came from being thousands of miles away from home and your pet gun took a dump on you. So I would say I would concur there that probably the most epic lessons and the ones that sting the most, natural terrain 3-gun matches.
Yeah, and I think really, really big majors you learn more from across the board, just because there's just more going on. There's more heat. There's more stages. There's more time spent shooting. There's just more of everything. I was pretty lucky that I got exposed. I shot Iron Man, I think, in my second year of shooting, and that was my first major. And although I got completely curb stomped, I really wish I would have shot it in my first year and gotten curb stomped worse, because I would have learned those lessons earlier. And the sooner that you can go shoot a big major match, like as soon as you're comfortable shooting some locals, go find a major and shoot it. You will learn as much shooting one major match as you will a whole year of local matches.
Yeah. And like, I'm more excited about shooting some of these big 3-gun matches throughout the year than I am about like what people would call quote unquote normal vacations. Like, they're just epic. And the sooner you start coming out, the sooner you're going to get it. And you're going to be one of us Like, you just got to do it. Got to get off the fence. Next question. I actually like this one. This one, I'm actually going to shout him out. This is one of our staff people from Multigun Nationals. Brian wants to know, what are good belt configurations for different divisions? So, like, how... And this is interesting because Adam and I are physically different sized people, so we have very different answers for this. But the quick rundown, not like to the notch number of how far apart your magazines are apart, but like, how do you lay out in a conceptual sense your 3-gun belt?
So yeah, like Maxwell said, we have very different waist sizes. For the record, I have a 28-inch waist. And if you want to see what that looks like visually, you can do what Maxwell did and pick up my belt while it's laying on the ground in the garage after a match and look through it and ask the question, holy shit, dude, is it this size when you're wearing it? And I'll answer, yeah. The look on his face was amazing. I wish I would give anything to have that on video.
I knew Adam was a little people, but damn.
Yeah. So anyways, so for me, real estate on the belt, super important. So I run Safariland ELS belt setup, which a lot of 3-gun shooters do. I have the same belt that I've had the entire time. I eventually just bought a second belt that would fit other Adam here, so I can loan it out to people and take newer people to matches, because I couldn't swap belts with anybody. Like, it just wasn't a thing. So I have a whole nother belt that I bought at full retail just to help other people shoot matches. Now I pistol on the right. Obviously, when I was shooting tack, it would be all of my shot shell caddies across the front, then space for 3 pistol mags, then space for 2 rifle mags. Now, rifle mag number 2 was damn near touching the pistol on the other side, wrapped all the way around. So that was full loadout. That's 34 shotgun rounds, 3 pistol mags, and 2 rifle mags. They all fit like that. Eventually what I moved to, because I'm such a skinny dude and I don't have a belly, if I'm prone on a bunch of shotgun caddies in front of me, that was a huge problem when I was shooting tack, for a bunch of other, kind of fit reasons, but I basically felt like I was laying on top of a log. So I found that even though I loaded slower, if I moved my shot shell caddies, I made up for it in the long range. So I put another ELS clip on my 24 round Carbon Arms backbone, which is what I used for shot shell caddies back in the day, because I never lost a shell and you went prone a lot. And I mounted it vertically on my left hip, so I could have a bunch of shotgun shells on there and not have any of them in front of me. So I'd put a couple pistol mags towards the front, then the shot shell caddies, then the rifle mags, then I switched to open. Not a lot changed, except now the shotgun mags go in the second position. So it's pistol mags first, then shotgun mags, then rifle mags. The way that I put my shotgun mags in the belt, I don't think anybody else does it. I actually hook my shotgun mags into rifle mag pouches, and I have a bunch of folded up cardboard that's sort of taped in place in order to make the shotgun mag pouches fit the little hooks that are on, or the rifle mag pouches fit the little hooks that are on the shotgun mags. And the reason I do that is if I just hook them straight to my belt like everybody else does, I don't have enough waist to separate them, so I have to get them farther away from the center line of my body in order to create space so I can put my fingers between the shotgun mags and put them into the gun. That is what I do.
What you folks will learn is that Riser is the most MacGyver of the two of us. He has some of the most awesome, simple innovations with duct tape and cardboard that you will ever find. So I am very similar to Adam conceptually, so I'll just highlight a couple things. I also use Safariland ELS. I've been using it since it came out. It's been often imitated. I would say not duplicated yet. I've tried the other ones. Currently, I still prefer Safariland.
Well, quick note on that before you go on. I think if you're starting in the sport, it's the way to go, because it allows you to borrow stuff from other people.
That's a great
So
point.
lot of like big matches, you end up like, oh crap, I need to like iron or hard as hell days, the all pistol stage. You had to have like 6 pistol mags on you to finish the all pistol stage, and nobody had 6 pistol mag pouches because why the hell would you? So there was just a pile of mag pouches. Like when your squad rolled up, everyone would just take their mag pouches off and put them in a pile. And then a lot of people just took their mags and put them in another pile, and you would come back and fill up whatever 2011 mags were there. You'd grab 6 2011 mag pouches, you'd hook them all into your belt, and you'd go shoot the stage. But more so for shot shell caddies.
Yes.
In big matches where, oh, now I need, I started this sport, I can carry 12. That gets me through club matches. Now I'm shooting Texas 3-gun, and I need 30. And it's really nice just to be able to borrow some from some dudes on your squad and clip them to your belt. Anyways, go ahead.
Yep. And so that's a real thing. Like, and especially like if you're in a group that uses Tech Lock or whatever Weber calls theirs, don't try to change your whole group of friends. If you're flocking with a bunch of people that have a system, unless it's totally atrocious to you, consider using it. I use a UBL drop offset, and I use the QLS forks to attach the holster, and I have a UBL. I have a drop offset on both sides of me, and that changed. That was something that came about from my open chapter of my life. In that the reason for the offside UBL was for the shotgun magazine. So it dropped it below my waistline a little bit, so the mag pouch would ride a little bit smoother, and then I would also get a better draw on it because it's so big. It was a little bit lower so that my elbow would have a little bit of range of motion to pull that thing out. So that's why I have one on both sides, and then obviously you can remove that stuff if you don't need it. And then similar to Adam, shotgun stuff almost always goes in the front. The next thing I do is pistol mags, because you have to reload pistols more than you have to reload rifles, and then rifles are in the back. I would say something that has evolved over the years, especially from the concealed carry side of the house, is I start appendix carrying more. As I got better at shooting, the stuff I wanted most urgently migrated towards the front of my body. So, like, if I know I need to reload a rifle, I start to have a rifle mag pouch that I could draw, like, from the 12 o'clock or appendix position. If I knew it was a pistol mag, like the number 1 pistol mag, that comes from the front of the body position. So, like, whatever is the most critical, I try to migrate towards the front. And then, lower priority stuff or just in case stuff rotates towards the back. Now, back to that UBL. I had it there for open shotgun magazines, but since belt real estate is so premium in the multi-gun sports, I actually was like, well, I got this here. I might as well make a rifle mag pouch for it. I actually started really liking having a rifle mag pouch on that drop offset because it's quick and easy to get to, but it also is organized for my hand in that I can differentiate between the two. Like, I can have a rifle mag close at hand for a close reload, but I don't confuse it with I don't go for a rifle mag and come up with a pistol mag, or I don't go for a pistol mag and come up with a rifle mag. Like, it's in a different place, but it was like newfound real estate. So having other stuff that goes on and out, even though I don't currently use Vepers for any of my 3-gun right now, I still have the UBL on there, and I still shoot my open 3-gun belt because I like having that drop offset there so I can get more stuff in kind of the front half of my body where I can reach it more readily.
Fair enough.
Other things on belt configurations, keepers. Like the little straps that would attach your outer belt to your inner belt.
How many people do you think you've seen over the course of your shooting career lose a belt mid-stage?
20.
Yeah, you got me beat by a few, but not a lot. I'm high teens, I'd say.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's
Like,
it's a lot
and-
like retention holsters. Lots of people will tell you they don't need one until they have an incident, and then they have one the next week.
Yep. 100%. Yeah, retention holster, absolute must. The other, so I don't run a drop offset. I run those QLS clips as well because my problem, I got a pretty messed up back from a lot of years of doing hippie climbing shit, and so I don't like having anything on my belt that I don't need. I actually take off my pistol and everything from my belt between stages in a USPSA match, which everybody thinks is total insanity. But I will walk to the safe area and strip everything off, or strip the pistol off, strip the rest of stuff off outside the safe area. But I strip my whole belt clean between every single stage, because if I don't, by the end of the day, I am hurting and I just want to get out of there, and that's not how you shoot well. But I don't run a drop offset. I have the QLS clip mounted straight to my belt. The reason being that in 3-gun there is a lot of running, and I find that with my build I don't really gain a whole lot in terms of speed. I can still put down sub-second draws when I have to with the holster mounted on my belt and not lowered, but I don't like having a heavy gun flopping around while I'm running, so I don't. So run whatever you like. Just make sure it makes sense.
Yep. And second part of Brian's question, he asked about our favorite holsters and attachments. I think we addressed a lot of that. But the thing to understand specifically about holsters and attachments is everyone is going to feel differently about them. If you use something that's pretty common, like go to the match, look around. If you see it around a lot, probably a safe investment. If it's someone you've never heard of, you're gambling. They might be awesome. They might not be. I've bought just as many holsters that were not awesome as ones that I've continued to use for 20 years. And I would say the same about, even more so about hangers. Everybody's got like this voodoo hanger that's going to put the gun in the whatever awesome position. Most of that is smoke and mirrors. Yes, if you can get the holster in the perfect position, it will probably get you a better draw. But at what cost? Is that something that you can, multi-gun with? Is that something that's going to is there a reason you really want your holster to be in that position? People put, just because there's a lot of range of motion and adjustment in holsters, people put their holsters in a lot of weird places. Like ultimately, you want your hand to you're with your wrist straight. You want your hand to ergonomically fall on whatever piece of equipment it is. That's the angle you want it at. Try not to think about it any harder than that.
Yep. All of my stuff I think is Safariland. The only reason for that is while I was still coming up, I got a 40% off Safariland. How many of those things do you think they printed? 1 million? I mean, we all ended up with like 12 of those in the early 2000s.
Yeah.
But so anyway, so I basically just all right, 40% off, let's do this. And I just ordered all Safariland stuff. So they did what they were trying to do. I used to run an ALS holster. When I switched to a 2011, I stopped because I didn't like having a thumb button that was sort of in the same location as my safety. I switched to a GLS holster, which is the one that has the button down by your second finger that goes underneath the trigger guard on your pistol. The one thing to keep in mind about retention holsters, if you are running a slung rifle system where you sling your rifle essentially backwards, so normal rifle slinging, it goes over your primary arm, shoulder, and underneath the other one. A lot of people sling their rifle the other way, where if you're right-handed, the muzzle of your rifle will be down on your right side. That puts your sling underneath your pistol holster, and I've seen people pop pistols out of GLS holsters unslinging rifles because the rifle sling clips the holster retention mechanism on the way up and just pulls that thing out of there like a cork.
And Kyle Litzy, your reigning world champion, DQ'd from Multi-Gun Nationals 2 years ago because he wore out a GLS holster. Just unsolicited, that pistol popped out from a hip check running around. All right. Cleanse your palate here, Riser, because we have a completely different question.
All right.
How would you approach heavy metal in the current year?
I wouldn't, because heavy metals. I apologize in advance to a few of my older friends who shoot heavy metal.
Oh, here it
heavy
is,
metal
folks. Here it comes.
Is where people go when they don't want to compete against good shooters. There, I said it. When is the last time you saw somebody shooting heavy metal that was really good? I'll tell you when. I'll tell you exactly when. Gosh darn it, I'm gonna blank on his name. Glenn Shelby. Glenn shot heavy metal, or whatever it's called, at Rocky Mountain this spring when I went and shot it. Glenn isn't scared of freaking anybody, and he shoots like a maniac. He clearly was shooting heavy metal because he felt like it. He won by a lot because that's what Glenn Shelby does when he shoots a division without any heat in it. He is one of the very few people that I've seen shoot heavy metal that I would not say was hiding. There, I said it.
Yeah, I would say most of the people that I know or have observed shooting heavy metal, they just really love the stuff, and they really love banging on targets hard. Sean Nelson, one of the F5 camera guys, the action gunner camera guys, you'll see him running around with the gyro a lot. He loves him some heavy metal, and he just digs it. He doesn't care, who's shooting it or whatnot. So you're kind of on your own. It's kind of like you have to approach it as like, I really want to shoot this stuff, and I think it's fun. And you kind of just have to make peace with the fact that there's not really going to be any competitive heat there. If I were approaching it, the way I look at that equipment, I would get whatever equipment I needed to compete in heavy, however that is being facilitated at an event that I would be doing that. For me, that would be something like, and this does actually happen, but like people would be like, this year, Texas 3 gun. Everybody bring your heavy metal stuff. Like a match. We'll try to get people to shoot heavy metal. Trigun did it a few times. Texas 3 gun championship has done it a few times. So there'll actually like be some people there, and everybody kind of, not everybody, but a group of people kind of agree that like, hey, we're all doing this together. So like it's cool. So I would jump in on whatever that is to be a part of that. But you either have to shoot whatever equipment you think would be cool, talking to you M14 guys, or you have to shoot stuff that is good, and those are not the same thing. If you're trying to actually shoot like competitive, top-notch heavy metal gear, you need to buy a JP, you need to buy a JP.
That's pretty much the list.
It's pretty much the list.
Speaking of, this is where my I'm not going to say disdain. I don't disdain heavy metal. If people want to shoot it good, I have a disdain for hiders, and I only say I'm just talking shit, really, when I'm talking about heavy metal people being hiders. But I do know a few who actually are. But one of the reasons that I don't like heavy metal, or the idea of heavy metal, is remember back in the early Three Gun Nation days, when Three Gun Nation wasn't its own thing. They were basically like broadcasting other matches, and then they had like a shoot off at the end.
Yeah, they would take the top 10% out of every division, and that was the shoot off. That was the beginning of Three Gun Nation.
And it was kind of sweet. Like, I honestly
sweet.
wish it. Yeah, it was pretty sweet. I was into it, and I don't remember which Brian it was. It was either Brian Ray or Brian Vaught, one of the two.
Brian Ray.
And Brian Ray shooting the M14 in heavy metal with irons, and I was like, that is dope. I was so into it. And then they showed the score, and it was like Brian and one other dude, and they didn't show 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th place because it was just the two of them. And I was like, oh, nobody shoots this. This is just like these two guys competing against each other while there's like 300 other people at this match. And that like instantly was like, nope, we're not shooting heavy metal because I want to shoot against the most people possible.
Fun story to build on that. In that era when they were pulling dudes into the shoot off out of other divisions, or they were getting dudes into the pro series out of other divisions, people started doing the math, and they're like, oh, I can't do it in tack, but if I jump into heavy, Rob Romero pretty famously did this on the show. Like, he showed up at the next match in heavy because he's like, well, if I do like this level, I'll be in the cut for some money. So it was moving people around in other divisions. That would quickly change though when they actually made the invite only pro series, and it was just tack ops. But the thing about heavy, all the shotgun rules are different. So you either have to run a pump or you don't. You have to plug your tube or you don't. And
maybe it's 40, maybe it's 45.
Yeah, and then all the pistol rules are different. Sometimes you just use tac optics pistol. Sometimes you have to make major power factor. Sometimes it has to be a 1911. Sometimes it just has to be a 45. So you kind of got to play with whatever rules that particular match wants to play by. And that is exaggerated fivefold over the normal differences between matches on equipment rules. Everybody does it a little bit differently, which leads me into the next lens that I would look at it through, and that would be as an event promoter. I'm a match director of 2 major matches. Currently, I've match directed others, been a range master at others. So, as an event promoter, if I want people to shoot heavy metal, you have to look at what the most people will shoot in. And the most successful that heavy metal has been recently is basically 308 tac ops. So that is complete craziness. My adjectives aren't awesome right now. That's lunacy to real dyed-in-the-wool heavy metal shooters, because they like walnut and steel. And
yeah, Kurt Miller would Spartan kick you just for saying those words.
Right. But guess what? Most of the dudes who thought that was cool have aged out of the sport, and the ones that are left are kind of looking at what it costs, because it's already an expensive sport. And what would you say? Doubles? Oh,
pretty close to it. Yeah,
average.
For sure.
Doubles, maybe
well,
doubles.
Even if you have all the guns, like, what's the cheapest 308 you can?
Well,
get
yeah,
your
the
hands
ammo,
on?
like per pull, average per pull, you're probably double. You know, it's probably a little bit more with the rifle. It's the same with the shotgun, and it's a little bit more with the pistol. So like a lot of dudes are just like, well, yeah, it's cool, but it's not that cool. So the most successful it has been is when it's basically 308 tac ops. And I would use whatever shotgun and pistol that match is coming at you with, and then you gotta get a good rifle, and there aren't very many. Like you might, JPs are good, Knights are good, and then ADMs are good, but it's kind of a crapshoot. You might get a good one, you might not. Is it accurate or not? Does it cycle reliably or not? A lot of the manufacturers on the back end that make these things are like, oh, we hate AR-10s. They're such a pain in the butt, and the people who buy them are an even bigger pain in the butt. So you gotta spend some serious money on a good rifle if you're even gonna try it. And I'm not saying that to get you to buy a rifle. I'm just saying you will not have fun if you don't have a good rifle, and the ammo and everything to go with it. So as an event promoter, I look at it as what would be the most successful, and that's basically 308 tac ops. Me myself, if I could just I think the ideal heavy would be like a tac ops 308 rifle, a semi-auto shotgun to 10 rounds, and major power factor pistol, like a USPSA limited major power factor, so that you could use 40. In my head, that is the heavy that I want to see succeed, that is probably the least viable of all the options. And that's what I have to say about that.
Yep. Moving on.
The first year I was match director of Multi-Gun Nationals, we had 3 people shoot heavy metal. And
Woo!
I think 1, maybe 2 signed up last year, and they ended up moving to other divisions. All right, palate cleanse once again. Beyond locals, what does 3-Gun need today?
Could we get a little less broad? Matches in the West that aren't terrible.
Well, so I'll jump in on this, and maybe you can build on it. So I think what 3-Gun needs today is more of a gateway. We need more of a gateway sport, or an in-between, an intermediate sport between action pistol and 3-Gun, because there's such a gap between a multi-gun sport and a single gun sport that you don't really get time or experience to develop the other guns, the rifle and the shotgun, in a match setting the way you do with a pistol. And so I think if we had single gun sports, like I think if there was a more active action carbine scene, if there was a more active action shotgun scene, there would be more inroads to multi-gun, and it could be a little bit more of a culminating extravaganza instead of like its own crazy flavor. Like, I would like to see a world where, like in USPSA world, because I'm involved with USPSA, so if I were involved in USPSA world, I could see a world where Multi-Gun Nationals is the national culmination of an area multi-gun series, and an Area 3 or an Area 7 or an Area 1 wasn't necessarily a 3-gun match. It might be a 2-gun match, for that specific market. A 2-gun match will do better in the Southwest than a 3-gun match attendance-wise. A 3-gun match will do better than a 2-gun match in the Midwest attendance-wise. It's just, just kind of culturally. So I could see multi-gun not necessarily meaning 3-gun, and multi-gun being a derivative of some of the action long gun sports, so people could play action long gun games in a third of the piece of 3-gun. And so 3-gun wasn't the only way to do it, and it was kind of a culminating thing. So what I think 3-gun needs to remain viable is that it needs to, I think we need to develop more of the single gun sports, specifically the carbine. And when I say specifically the carbine, I mean not another long range sport. Okay? There are a ton of long range sports already. You can lay on your belly and do that all kinds of places. We need to develop the other aspects of the carbine that are interesting and fun to attract people into the sport. I mean, how many, could we say millions of AR-15s have been sold in the last 20 years with all the political roller coaster stuff? Every time there was a panic buying session, all those guns are out there. And a big part of the reason that 3-Gun Nation was so successful was a big part of their timing was they were on the rise at a time when people had bought a bunch of guns in reaction to, well, specifically Sandy Hook. All right, so they specifically bought a bunch of AR-15s because they were worried about them getting banned, and then all of a sudden when they weren't worried about them getting banned, they heard about this sport. It was like, oh, here's this place where I can use this thing that I bought and do what it's supposed to do. Kind of like some of these Raptor clubs or UTV clubs or whatever. It's like, all right, they're a destination adventure for this thing you bought. I think we need to make more inroads into that so that your first plunge isn't into the sport, isn't balls deep into, a major 3-day multi-gun event.
Yeah. I think there's two things that kind of popped into my head here. So thing number one is the really interesting thing about three gun is the reason that people give to not shoot three gun is the shotgun. People are like, I don't want a quad load / I don't want to buy a $5,000 Dissident. And I can understand both of those. Although quad loading isn't very hard, but nobody really makes an out of the box affordable three gun shotgun. Like, I think the closest version that I would say is accessible is like a Stoeger MK3, or is it
MK3 is the Stoeger, the Franke's the next one up.
The Stoeger one. I was trying to remember the nomenclature for it. But anyways, I think the Stoeger is kind of like the most affordable version of that. And it's kind of cut port. It's kind of all the things, but if you want it to be, appropriate, you still need to like bust out a Dremel tool on a brand new shotgun and just start going to town, which is a lot for people. But most people that I hear say, I don't want to shoot three gun because the shotgun just sounds like a pain in the ass. And then most of the people that I know that shoot three gun, that's our favorite gun. Because
100%.
Everything you shoot explodes, flies, blows up, or makes noise. It's freaking awesome. It's so much fun. And so that's, I don't really know what can be done about that, but that is definitely a big stepping stone for a lot of people, is just getting from two gun to three gun. And I think maybe the thing that can be done about that is quite simply just people bringing more people in. Because I know, I don't know how many people I've taken to their first three gun match, but it's been a lot. And some stick, some don't, but I have a full set of guns, like 3 guns and a belt and all the stuff that I can just like put in a bag and hand to somebody and be like, if you show up with ammo, you can just run all of these things. And I'm not saying that everyone has to go out and buy 3 more guns, but like, when you're done shooting your little local USPSA match, find a dude on your squad who's awesome and be like, hey man, I'm going to shoot three gun next weekend. Do you want to come? I have all the stuff. You just need to show up with some ammo and I can introduce you. I think that kind of thing would go a long ways. I had something else, but I'm going to be real honest. My brain is quite fried at the moment and I couldn't think of it.
All right, so building on that, another question we got: what should local matches be doing to grow the sport?
Ooh,
and I'll say the regions of the country that I know of that were the most successful concurrently ran either a 3-gun class or a practice session. So like, one of the other episodes Adam talked about his time at TPC. All right, while TPC was teaching that 3-gun class, a bunch of hardcore 3-gunners came out of the Utah area. In my area, the Minnesota 3-gun group specifically, they would run a intro to 3-gun class every year in the spring. That was just skills and drills, and it was like a round robin thing that they would rotate through, and it would fill up every year. It was sold out every year for a long time, and they said they would retain about 10 to 20% of those people. So they ran a big class of, I don't know, I think they would cap it. We'll say they capped it at 50 people. They would retain about 10 to 20% of those year after year after year. In addition to all the other ways that people find their way to the sport, they did pretty well with that. Similar to, what SMD at the time, probably most incarnate now, is Zoo City. That similar thing to what's going on down there in the Fort Bragg area. They just had a really active local scene, an interactive, a crawl, walk, run way of approaching the sport. That has been where the sport has been the most successful, and people, by and large, aren't just going to go ahead and jump all the way in the deep end at a major match. They're going to want something local, something regional before they do something big. So, again, kind of a pipeline means of approaching the sport that, and probably also a non-competitive environment to try and wrap their arms around what the sport is and get interested in it, instead of just getting donkey punched at matches until all of a sudden you start to like figure some stuff out.
Yep, I can get behind that.
And then the third line in this questioning, I believe this person was very vague. The question verbatim is, why did you guys step away from 3-gun? Which on its face is the most absurd question I've ever heard. Because I literally tracked my entire career towards 3-gun, and I have sacrificed all things possibly imaginable on the altar of 3-gun. I have lost relationships. I have lost jobs. God knows I've spent some money.
Yeah.
Which is funny. What I think this person is asking, again, because it was on my personal page, I think they're asking why the Jeff Kirkwald match went away from 3-gun. The match that I have run the most is...
That makes more sense.
The match that I have run the most is, it's called the Jeff Kirkwald Memorial. This year we did the 10th anniversary of it. And for those not familiar, it's a 3-gun match, but we essentially do stages the first day. We use those scores to seed a bracket to do a 3-gun nation style shoot off the second day. And so the second day is all head-to-head shoot-offs. Everybody gets, it's double elimination, so everybody gets to shoot at least twice, and we have other side stages going on, whatnot. It is one of the most fulfilling things I've ever done is put on that match. It has definitely helped with my healing process, and of course we generate a bunch of money for charity. We've supported a bunch of great causes over the years. But in and around around about COVID time, as with the sport in general, we saw participation numbers drop off quite a bit. So supply and demand, we saw attendance for that match going down. And at the same time, the core group of people, myself and the other guys involved with it, we went from being 20-somethings early in our careers, maybe early in relationships, to 30, 40-somethings, married, kids, evolving careers. Maybe we moved further away from that location. And we were getting more and more demands to do other types of matches. So here I am advocating for single gun, development of a single gun series and all that stuff. Okay, well, who's going to do them? So like a lot of stuff in volunteer organizations, it's a great idea that someone else should do. We basically got to the point where the whole, not just any one person, not just me, not any one person, but all of us collectively kind of found our capacity for putting on events per year. And so we need to channel our resources towards putting on the events that will get the most interest from the most people. So at the 10-year mark, we just saw it as a good place to, okay, we've done it for 10 years. We had the 10th anniversary one. This is a good juncture if we were going to go in a different direction to possibly explore another direction. And so looked really hard at all the directions you could go. We could do a carbine match. We could do a shotgun match. We could do a 2-gun match. With that particular facility, long story short, I thought we could do best as a shotgun match with that particular venue and that venue's success with shotgun matches in the past. And timing-wise, 2025 is a team selection year for World Shoot 2026. So it seemed like the most viable option for our interest level, for our facility, and for the market that predominantly attends that match. That is why we elected to, in the 2025 season, this will be our first attempt at resurrecting the shotgun match, and that is one of the USPSA qualifiers for Team USA to go to the Shotgun World Shoot in Greece. So I believe that is the answer to the question that I believe that individual was asking. I hope that maybe satisfies curiosities on that.
I hope so, because the other interpretation of that question is absurd.
Yeah, right. Do you think we will see adaptation of Hit Factor 2-3 or adoption, like widespread adoption of Hit Factor to 3-gun, or is that too taboo and it will never work?
Oh, I know the answer to this. The answer is no, because how many different organizations have tried to become a governing body for 3-gun in the time that we've been shooting? 4? USPSA, UML, 4. PCSL, and what was the other one?
3-gun Nation.
3-gun Nation, and then SMG, 5.
Yeah.
So 5 different groups have attempted to become a governing body for 3-gun and incorporate some sort of standardization into the sport, which, going back to that, what does 3-gun need? It kind of needs that, because all the way back to the what do you want in heavy division, well, every single match runs heavy different. A lot of matches run other divisions different. There's just weird stuff that happens in different matches, and for a lot of not 3-gunners, and even some 3-gunners, that's kind of one of the biggest complaints, is when I go to a different match, I don't really know what to expect, because there's no unifying rule set, and they all kind of have their own special weirdness that goes on. Hit factor scoring is one of those things. I would love hit factor scoring to become standard across the board. I don't think many matches are going to go that way, because it does add complexity and a little bit of time if you don't have like a pretty dialed set of ROs. If, you know, for something like PCSL Nationals, where there's 3 ROs on every stage, we all had a really good system. You can just like crank people through, and it was awesome. That was great. For other matches, maybe not so much. I don't think it will happen, although I would love it to.
All right, we're very yin and yang on, which is why we're a good duo.
Yeah,
I do think the sport would do well to go towards Hit Factor. One of our other episodes, Riser was complaining that we didn't get modified on board fast enough. One of the things happening in and around that time, when I got involved with USPSA, or when I took over stewardship of that match, one of the things I wanted was for us to try and come together under a rule set. Now, everything is either USPSA rules or plagiarized USPSA rules, really. So it's one of the infuriating things, because Adam is right. Every major match you go to does have differences. However, it drives me bananas, because really it's about 10% of stuff that's different.
I don't even think it's that. I think it's just enough that people who want to complain have an excuse to complain.
Absolutely.
It's super minimal. It's super minimal.
Back in the Dizzy, shout out to our friend Dave Hartman on the 3-Gun Show. Dave and I were going to do a show where we got all the rule books that were active at the time, and we were going to highlight all the stuff that was the same and different.
Ooh.
So we could still do this, because there's fewer rule books now. But it's infuriating to me how much time has been spent nitpicking the rule set to make minute changes, when that is not the most important thing to change to our sport. Marketing is the most important thing to change to our sport. Storytelling is the most important thing to change more important to change in our sport. Return on investment for sponsors is more important than rule changes in the sport. Finding new shooters, more important than rule changes. I could list all kinds of things that are more important than refining the rule set. But what does every person that runs a match want to do? They want to fine-comb their rule set. And every year, every single one of them does, including USPSA. There's a rules committee meeting probably sometime soon here. It's the most refined thing that needs the least improvement. But there is subtle nuanced differences between them. But specifically to hit factor. So hit factor is the difference between scoring. For those not familiar, by and large, the sport has been scored what would be called time plus, which is essentially your score is the amount of time it took you to neutralize all the targets. Think of it as timed golf. All right. So your score would be the time from when you teed off to when you got it in the cup. And then they would penalize you in the form of time for doing naughty things or undesirable things. All right. Misses were penalized in time, plus 5 seconds. Foot faults, all right, shooting out of bounds, plus 5 seconds. Failure to engage, 15 seconds. No bad dog, all right? Always time. Time added back to your time is how the sport predominantly has been scored. Hit factor is different, and it's a horrible name. Really what it is points per second, all right? So every target is worth an amount of points, say 10 points, and then they take your accumulated points through that whole stage and divide it by the time that it took you to get them. All right. So speed and accuracy. How many points did you get? How long did it take you to get them? If I can get more points faster than you, I win. If it takes you longer to get those points, you are not as good of a shooter as I am. That's hit factor. Now, where I think hit factor came in, why the sport should go in that direction, when I start, well, first of all, caveat, this told you that story to tell you this one. Ammo has always been expensive, okay? I find it kind of amusing. 1776 Duck, he's very entertaining. If you want to go check him out and you're into 1911 stuff, if you're not into 1911 stuff, don't bother. But he's a Gen Z guy. He talks about back in the day when 45 was cheap, and he is referring to 2019. Okay? I am not an old guy, all right? And I'm like, dude, that's not back in the day. Like, I remember blah, blah, blah. And then when I first got started, those dudes were talking about throughout the entire time, ammo has always been expensive, all right? Because it's a raw material, and they got to expend raw material and labor to get it. It's always been expensive. My grandfather, who now, being a 30-something, I realize this may have been an embellished story, but he also is from the Depression era, so I think it's based in truth. He went hunting with a friend of his, a neighbor of his, and that neighbor's mom would scold him and be very upset with him if he didn't kill 2 ducks with one .22 bullet. So they would sit at the pond and they would wait for 2 ducks to swim so that the heads would line up so that he could shoot both of them at the same time.
Oh, I saw this in a Tom Berenger movie once. It was sick.
Yeah. Now I saw my grandpa do some pretty gangster stuff with a pretty shitty .22 rifle, and he only had one eye. So I'm willing to concede that it probably was based in at least some shred of truth. But just to show you, all right, these were kids hunting meat. They had to get 2 kills with 1 bullet. 1 shot, 1 kill was not enough. Had to be 1 shot, 2 kills. Okay? Ammo's always been expensive. Now, told you that story to tell you this one. When I got into the sport, people were a little bit more willing to burn ammo. All right? The whole concept behind, our favorite match, the Iron Man, was, that's what attracted it to me. When I saw it on TV, the match director, Travis Gibson, was like, when my dad started this match, he got tired of going to all these matches where you go all across the country, you only shoot 300 rounds. He's like, I'm going to start a match, and if you come here, you're going to get to shoot 1,000. I'm like, well, I like to shoot 1,000 rounds. I'm going to that match. So, like, hoser matches were more acceptable back then. Most of the 2-gun matches that I went to, the reason I don't really like 2-gun, and I'm kind of getting over this phobia, is because most of the 2-gun matches I went to were like pistol matches that you got to hose stuff with carbines. There was just more tolerance for that stuff back then. As the sport has evolved, as our economy has changed, as people's levels of disposable income has changed, I think the interest level and the tolerance level in quote-unquote hoser matches or hoser stages has gone away. The people who are interested in this sport now and the people who have stuck with it are interested in some kind of marksmanship challenge. They don't want to just hose a wide-open paper target at 3 yards. They're looking for something marksmanship interesting, all right? So I think Hit Factor does that. It's not just a wide-open target, and if you get it, you get it, and if you don't, you don't. Like, there's some level of speed, accuracy, points. Getting back to Hit Factor, the reason we went to Hit Factor is because, okay, well, the facility that we have to do multi-gun nationals, how do you make an interesting rifle target? A rifle target either has to be further away or it has to be smaller. If we're working in 20-yard bays, 50-yard bays, 100-yard bays, you can only make the target so small. But if all of a sudden we start scoring alphas, charlies, and deltas, the same stage becomes completely different from a marksmanship standpoint, because now it's not just hitting a torso-sized piece of paper. You have to get the points. So as a stage designer, we can make more interesting marksmanship challenges that encompass a wider band of skill levels, and it's more interesting for a wider span of skill levels with the same stage. So that is the reason that Hit Factor, we started using Hit Factor at our match, and I think it's going to catch fire because in my head, we made the same match. Not the same, there's a couple things, but by and large, all the small stages were my fault, my design, all right? So all the really good stages, those were designed by other people. All the same people designed stages from year 1 to year 2. So many people were excited about the stages last year that, while flattered that they were really happy with the stages that we made, I was asking myself, what the heck was wrong with the stages last year? The only thing that changed was that we scored them Hit Factor. It made the same facility, the same flavor of stages, feel completely different to the competitors, and the feedback we got was resoundingly positive.
Well, I think one of the things you said just a minute ago, that different skill levels can shoot the same targets. I think that's one of the biggest benefits, is that it doesn't level the playing field, but it allows people of very different skill levels to compete on the same playing field, because in the matches that we came up on, you know, you go out to freaking Parma and there's 700-yard rifle steel with a 223, and a lot of people just can't hit that target. I mean, a lot of people can't shoot a lot of the targets that end up in time plus matches because they're trying to make it harder for the harder shooters, and they're just murdering the mid pack in the process. And so if you take something like, you know, PCSL 2-Gun Nationals that we just came from, there wasn't a shot in the match that was hard to make to shoot D's on, but to shoot A's on was difficult. But you can shoot the stage as a mid pack or a, you know, entry level shooter and have a great time on the same stage where, you know, Kyle and AJ are duking it out for half a percentage point.
Yeah, and I think it's also a little bit of a pessimist optimist thing. Like, you could shoot the same stage, have the same performance in time plus. It's how you did, and then we're going to assess you these penalties. All right. Failure to neutralize, penalty. Failure to engage, penalty. You didn't hit the long range target, penalty. Whereas in Hit Factor, I look at it more as like points and getting them. It's like Pac-Man. All right, there's a bunch of points out there, and you gobble them up as fast as you can. And if it's on the stage designer to entice you into shooting a shot, but if they put some ridiculously long, hard long-range target out there, and it's going to take you longer to hit it than it is the points that it's worth, it might be a better strategy to just not shoot it. I don't know of any targets like that this past year, but every once in a while there's something that's like, you know what, it's just a trap. It's not worth shooting at. So, but it's not a penalty. The stuff that you get or you don't get, it's the amount of points you could accrue in the time you took to get it. It's not, I did my best and then they hit me with these penalties and I got blown out with penalties so bad that it's a horrible run. It's like, I just didn't get very many points or it took me a long time to get them. So it's a little bit more optimistic, I think, too. I just kind of like it from that standpoint. And then the scoring part of it, it is a valid criticism. The only thing we're going to do different this year at Multigun Nationals, different from last year, was that we need to have one more person on our RO team because in a time plus match, the assumption is that you hit all the targets and you're really just compiling how many targets have penalties. All right, well, how many failure to neutralizes are there? How many complete misses were there? And so it's more of there's one over there. Okay, one over there. Yep, got it. One over there. Okay, got it. He maybe made like 3 notations in the pad after putting the time in, and then he hands it to the shooter. In hit factor, they have to score each target. So they have to score each target in time plus, like a RO has to go and walk by it, but then also somebody has to put in 2 alpha, Alpha Charlie, Charlie Delta. And if the person doing that has to look at the target and then put it in the tablet and look at a target and then put it in the tablet, that's what makes the scoring take a long time. If I have a pair of people, one person scoring the target, one person putting it in the tablet, so the person in the tablet doesn't look up from the tablet, they just follow that person around or they stand in the middle and they call it back to them. And then I have another RO getting the shooter ready. If I have a 3 RO team where I had a 2 RO team last year, the timing scoring difference of hit factor would completely go away and nobody would have noticed the difference, in my opinion.
Yep.
But I do think it's a good thing. I think viability of the sport should go in that direction. One of the only matches that sold out this year was PCSL Nationals. That's a hit factor match. That's a clue. And I think we're down to the last question. Palate cleansing once again.
Alrighty.
How do you train vision improvement? How do you train visual skills?
So when I first started shooting, it became very apparent that I needed to learn how to shoot with both eyes open, which now that I've been teaching for a long time, I don't think is actually true, but it is helpful. So shooting iron sights with both eyes open was a bit of a thing. My brain had a really hard time. You come up, you're either focused on the target and you get 2 guns, or you're focused on the gun and you get 2 targets. My brain had a really hard time computing which was which. And I literally just pointed guns at targets in the basement for like months to train my brain to just ignore the one that wasn't real. So that can be applied to almost everything through just like brute force. You can just put in rep after rep after rep with like very conscious effort of what you're paying attention to. In the days of red dots, it is much more learning how to focus on the target and being aware of the dot, not getting sucked into the dot or getting sucked into the scope when you're shooting like a 1-6 on 1 power. I think that shooting occluded for red dots is a great training aid. I've used it once in a match because there was sun straight in my face, but I don't shoot matches like that. I just used it as a training aid to make sure that I was doing the thing that I thought I was doing. And I was. I've had people have great success with that. I think for that specifically, it's really good. Really focusing on moving your eyes before you're moving the gun, I think, is another huge thing. And I think if you're shooting occluded in some practice sessions, I think it really drives home what you're doing wrong, because you end up with a giant black floating thing as you're going from target to target instead of shifting your eyes to the target and then bringing the gun in behind them. But it requires time, because what you're really trying to do is rewire your brain to understand the visual picture that's coming through your eyes and how you process it. So after all of that time just pointing guns at targets and trying to really pay attention to the sight picture that was real and not paying attention to the sight picture that was like the ghost double because I have two eyes and there's only one gun. Now when I present a gun with iron sights, I actually have to look for the second gun. Like if I'm like, oh, you know, like when I'm describing this to somebody and I'm doing it, I have to like consciously pay attention and try to figure out, oh, is there another gun there? Oh yeah, I can kind of see it down and right. And it just through brute force, you can make yourself visually understand that kind of stuff.
I would say I look at dry fire as kind of, there's like kind of three phases people will go through in dry fire, kind of a crawl, walk, run. And so like when people talk about dry fire, they kind of talk about dry fire as one thing. But like the first phase of dry fire is learning how to pull the trigger without moving the gun, right? That's where like we put a quarter on top of your slide and pull the trigger without it falling off there, right? That's phase one. That's crawling. Most people get that pretty quick, right? If they're actually trying to learn it. Walking is manipulations, right? So a draw, you know, the process of a draw, the process of a reload, indexing a magazine, bringing it to the gun, putting it together, pushing the button, letting the thing fall out, all that stuff. The next phase, the run phase, is really where I think we get to the vision improvement. And that phase is connecting your eyes and what they see in the sights to what your finger does on the trigger. I think I even saw this on Instagram today. It's sights give you permission to press the trigger. Trigger gives you permission to do other things, right? So that gives you permission to transition, reload, move, whatever, right? Because the shot has to happen before you can do the next thing, right? And I don't think just because people get to the running phase doesn't necessarily mean they're good at running. You can run, but like Napoleon Dynamite was running too. He wasn't doing it very well. So I think some people kind of get to this phase, and this is the phase you can live there forever. You know, I got up at 5 o'clock this morning to dry fire. After all these years, I'm still working on it, and you're chasing the dragon. You'll never get all the way there, but you get more and more refined as you go along. Vision improvement is just constantly the pursuit of pairing acceptable sight picture to a trigger press and then driving them to do something faster. So, excuse me. When I started doing dry fire books and they give you the drills, I'll just anecdotally pick one drill I started off at, like the best I could do it. After all my 3-Gun Nation years, shooting at a high level, I've won matches before. I decided to do this dry fire book. This drill, this very simple drill, 7 seconds is what I could do. All right? But I did that drill every day, or in a rotation, whatever you were doing. But you mark it on a par time, and you aggressively force your par time down. So over time, all right, I can do it at this level, take a 10th off. I'll do it at that level. I'll take 3/10 off. I'll do it at that level. I'll take 3/10 off. As you force yourself to try and get quicker at that drill, eventually you get down to your eyes have to move faster. You start to get just the right amount of confirmation before you leave. Most people over-confirm on their vision, and that is one of the things that slows them down. So vision training is a process of seeing what you need to see and kind of exploring what do you need to see and no more, no less. Because overseeing is just as big of an error as underseeing if you're trying to get to a top level. So vision improvement and vision training has a lot to do with sight picture, trigger press, putting those two things together and then driving them around to different size targets of different complexity and different difficulty in a different amount of time.
So one of the things that I did kind of midway through my shooting and that I've tried to instill in some other people and some students mostly has been really isolating vision skills while practicing. So for a good chunk of time, like a disturbingly long amount of time, I would dry fire without pressing the trigger at all. I was literally
Ooh, that's
trying
good.
to train my eyes to move to a target and then bring the dot there, and then move to another target and bring the dot there. And that did a few things. One thing it did was it did a great job of training me to lead with my eyes and just index the gun on that spot. It stopped me from overdriving the gun. When you really get sucked in to your optic, it's really easy to swing past targets and then have to come back on them, where if you're moving your eyes there, your gun will just naturally kind of come behind it. You won't have to think about drive the gun to the target. It will just show up in the appropriate amount of time. And so I would spend whole dry fire sessions with just two targets, like, as far apart as I could get them in the basement. So I was making like a 90-degree transition and just going eyes dot, eyes dot, eyes dot, eyes dot, and just moving back and forward, left and right. And just taking the trigger press completely out of it. And the way that I came to that was teaching draws. I think of the draw or the reload, or pretty much anything else, in like little component pieces, right? So it's like the first step of the draw is you're bringing your dominant hand up to the gun, you're gripping it appropriately, and you're bringing your non-dominant hand in toward your chest. The second is you're clearing the holster, you're leveling your gun, you're bringing your hands together. The third is you're presenting, you're aligning sights, you're doing all that stuff. So there's basically like three very rudimentary steps to a draw. And so when people were having trouble with their draw, I'd say, okay, well, like what's the final component that you end up with when you get out on your draw? Is your right hand grip incorrect? Is your left hand grip incorrect? Is your side alignment off? You're not indexing well, these are all solutions that can be addressed in a single component of the draw. So I've had, and I've done it myself, not just with students, but I've had problems where I was drawing the gun, trying to go faster and faster and faster, and I got to the point where my dominant hand was indexed too low on the gun, and I would literally practice just bringing my hand up and grabbing the gun. I wouldn't even come out of the holster. Like, my draw practice was literally going from hands relaxed at sides to my right hand is on the gun, gripping it appropriately, until just that component of the draw was just really driven home. And that was kind of a light bulb moment to me in visual stuff, that you can take all of the other things out and just practice the visual part. So what it did was it made me very good at that part. And, as Jerry says, this is a visual sport. Like, you can only see as fast as you can shoot. And so now another interesting byproduct of that is when it comes to things like stage breakdown, planning like that, you can only shoot as fast as you can see. So if you're doing it correctly, you should be able to essentially look across something like a plate rack or an array of steel or an array of paper and figure out how fast you can shoot that thing in reality when it comes to making up decisions like, pistol versus shotgun, things like that. So I can literally like look across an array of steel and be like, ting, 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 ting. And as fast as you can look at the center of each of them, that's all the faster you can shoot it. Unless you're just completely swinging for the fences and you get really lucky and just miraculously hook up, which is not how you should shoot stages ever, because that's not very sustainable. But once you get that skill set down, you don't even need a gun or a dot or anything else. You can literally look across an array and be like, yep, I can shoot it at that speed. Therefore, this option in this stage is a good idea or a bad idea.
Yeah, and I want to reiterate one of the things that Reiser said there was a lot of people associate dry fire with a trigger press and snapping of the firing pin. One of the things that I really latched onto when I started doing those dry fire drills from the book, they had you, from a vision standpoint, bring the gun to a target and prep the trigger without breaking the shot. So the drill wasn't part-time to click, because after a while your body won't let you be inefficient. So it starts to maybe like try to dip its hand into the candy without saying trick or treat. All right, so like you'll come up and click. Oh yeah, I got it. Well, was it really there, or were you just pressing the trigger before your part time went off? So some of the drills had you arrive with an aligned sight and a prepped trigger. So all the slack out of your trigger. So on a double action gun, half pressed. On a safe action gun like a Glock or an M&P, all right, that all prepped against the wall. On a 2011 style pistol, that little bit of prep that's in there, all the way in there, settled sight with the trigger prepped so you could break a shot. That's a vision technique too. It's not just necessarily, oh, yep, click, got it. Working those components. Same thing like if we were going to work a reload, like people will just think, well, if you just work the whole reload enough times, you'll get it. And to a certain extent you will, but if you want to refine it, a drill is called the briquette reload, all right? So taking the drawing the magazine and bringing it all the way just to the point of no return in the magazine well and stopping it there, all right? So you're completely refining that move before the seat so that you index it correctly.
Similar thing I was talking about with the draw. Like you take whatever skill set you want and you break it down into its most basic component.
Yep.
I didn't think about this at the time, but nowadays when I practice draws, if I'm trying to beat a par time, I don't press the trigger at all because I found myself doing the ready, fire, aim instead of ready, aim, fire.
Yep.
And for the same reason, like I will draw to a sight picture and be like, was I in the A zone with my dot when the timer went off? If yes, that counts. If no, doesn't count. But it's really easy to be like, click right underneath the target on the way up and be like, yep, totally beat it.
Yep. All right. Part B of this question, the same thing. How do we train transitions? Now, because we're multi-gun shooters, transitions can mean two things. Transitions can be target to target. Transitions can be gun to gun. I think transitions gun to gun is just a matter of reps. You have to get rid of the one thing and get to the next thing. The one thing to consider, well, there's lots of things to consider, but don't necessarily think of it as an if-then statement. Like similar to blending positions together while we're shooting, the more actions you can do to get rid of gun A whilst indexing gun B will improve your time. So can you transition to your support hand while starting to draw your pistol? Starting to put your hand on the grip while the other one is putting the other gun into the bucket instead of running to the bucket, putting the gun down, and then starting to draw. So can you blend those two things together? Can a long gun go in and the other long gun come out? While you're running up a hill unslinging a rifle, do you need to have the rifle all the way unslung before you get a magazine out? Blending two things together. Transitions, gun to gun, weapon system to weapon system. I think that's just reps. Transitions, target to target. Lots of ways to train that, similar to what we were talking about in vision. But target to target transitions, to me, that means spreading them apart, making them harder. So not necessarily just how long it takes you to get there, but making them smaller or making them no shoots, making them partials, getting accustomed to challenging targets, I think is the other thing for transitions there. I don't know. Do you have anything special on training transitions?
Yeah, a little bit. So with gun-to-gun transitions, like Maxwell said, the key thing is really getting the gun that you're getting away from into your non-dominant hand so you can start drawing the gun that you're going towards. I changed the way that I do transitions here a couple years ago, where I used to do a lot of matches where you'd be standing in front of a slant box and just like do a transition and then shoot the next gun. And in order to do that, I would bring my rifle. Like, let's say I was going from a rifle to a pistol. I would I would throw the rifle on safe and I would dump the rifle with my left hand on the forearm of the gun so I could get to the pistol faster, and it made for a very quick transition. I have since changed the way that I do that, where now I'm trying to do a transition without getting sucked into whatever the dump barrel, slant box is. So I now switch it to the buttstock so I can essentially reach out farther in front of me and dump into an apparatus without getting sucked into that apparatus, especially since I'm a short dude and have small arms. So even though technically speaking the transition is slower, it shows up on the clock as a quicker time from shot to shot because I'm not doing as much movement going all the way in and all the way out. So look at it holistically in terms of like the stage that you're shooting is what I'm saying. For target transitions, kind of like what I was talking about with the red dots, if I'm practicing in the basement, I'm literally practicing just moving my eyes and bringing the gun to it. So I'll put 2 targets on the wall. I'll go eyes dot, eyes dot, eyes dot, eyes dot, and then I'll start spreading the targets apart. If you want to make transitions harder, don't make the targets farther away, make them farther apart. Because as the targets get farther away from you, the transition actually gets easier because the angle between the targets is a smaller angle. The other thing that can really come into play is no shoots, especially targets that are partialed up with no shoots that you either have to transition across. So if your right target has a no shoot on the left side, it punishes breaking a shot early pretty hard. If it has a no shoot on the right side, it punishes overshooting the target pretty hard. So if I'm practicing hard transitions and I'm stacking no shoots or hard cover or something like that on there, I won't stack it vertically. I'll stack it side by side because that's really what you're after. A vertical no shoot doesn't really change anything if it's underneath the target that you're shooting at. The other thing that's some people are down with, some people aren't. I've seen some people have pretty good results at is shooting a cadence drill where you basically shoot 6 rounds into a single target, like pop, 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 pop. And then the idea is you put 3 targets out there, a couple yards apart, and you want to shoot across those 3 targets at the same cadence. So it's not pop, 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 pop. It's pop, 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 pop. And I've put up some videos on my YouTube channel about this, but that is a training tool to be used to help you to force faster transitions between targets. It's not the way that I actually shoot stages in a match. It's a training tool only. Some people have really good success with this. Some people don't. It seems to me that people who are musically inclined do very well with this, and people who can't carry a beat to save their life can't do this. That really seems to be the deciding factor as far as I can tell, because some people just can't just shoot 6 rounds at a cadence regardless of what the sights are showing them. They have to get to the next target, which is, kind of the point of the whole drill is that if you know a round is coming out of the gun and you got to get that gun to the next target because a round's going to be coming out of it, people will transition quicker than they think they can. And I've seen a lot of people have like pretty good breakthroughs on this. Now, this isn't something that I would throw 500 rounds at, but a quick couple examples of like, hey, try this. Now I just want you to go pop, pop between the 2 targets at that same, 25 split that we just had instead of the 45 that you were just shooting.
I'm really glad you brought that up because, yes, that is a tool that I use quite a bit to teach folks. It's done a lot for me. So a lot of times when I'm really trying to break down a live fire shooting skill, I use cadence shooting because to shoot faster, you have to find a more efficient way to do the thing. And also want to highlight where Riser said there about putting the targets farther apart, not necessarily farther away. In my class that I do for law enforcement professionally, I use that. I have a target that has a poster-sized target that has 3 things that roughly simulate an A zone spread around in a bay. But I have them stand 5 yards away with a carbine. And essentially we use cadence drills to force them or get them used to the idea of transitioning target to target. And that's some of what I explained to them. I'm like, all right, this is not a way to engage a threat. We're not talking about height over bore here. We got really close to the target so that this is not a marksmanship challenge. We made the target pretty substantial, so it's not a marksmanship challenge. We are working on the skill of moving target to target and visually in that class leaving the scope with your eyes, coming back into the scope with your eyes. And we have to stand close to the target for them to do that, especially with a line of 10 guys. Instead of going one at a time in the bay and trying to drive a hard transition, if we stand close to the target, we increase the angle, and so they get the same thing simulated, and we can just isolate the skill of a transition. So that is something that I use quite a bit. And I actually lit the internet on fire with one of my YouTube videos where I said the average person can shoot 25 splits. And some people who thought they were very clever were like, oh, the average person can't shoot. It's like more like 50. I go to people who have never practiced this skill at all. I can get anybody with a basic level of carbine skill, so like they could qualify to be a police officer, which is a very low bar in most states. I can get them to shoot 25 splits in an hour. You have to be interested and trying to get under 20, and to get under 15, you're special. But it's not that hard to do, but we use the cadence to get the gun shooting. And I explained it to people. I was like, this is the best controlled way that I can get you to experience what the gun feels like shooting at a slick lick rate with a sight picture and control, is using a cadence drill. So glad you brought that up.
Yep.
All right. And the last thing, how do you train movement?
These are super fucking broad questions.
What's even funnier is the person that asked them, so that's going to be even funnier when you.
Do I? Can you give me a hint?
Yeah. He lives in your town, and they're a package deal.
Oh, yeah, okay. Well, the package deal, I told you, we can go out and shoot and work on all of this stuff. You guys didn't have time, so let me know when you do. I have a great story about one of the package deal that I will share with you. I think he'd be all right with it, but I'm not going to share it on the podcast. It'd be kind of a dick move, but very funny story about new guns. But awesome people. So here's the deal. Running really fast is very rarely as important as people think it is. How old was Jerry before he didn't automatically win every match he showed up at?
Ooh.
In his 60s?
Yeah.
Yeah, right? I am really confident I could whoop Jerry Michulik's ass in a foot race pretty much my entire life.
Yes.
And he was in his late 60s before I could beat him in a match. The reason is he was super efficient in the way that he moved. There was no extra stuff like you weren't drop stepping in places where you didn't have a lean and a drop step wasn't mandatory. You weren't changing the level of your shoulders a lot as you're leaving and entering positions. Very, very smooth from one spot to another. Movement is a lot more about blending positions together than it is just running super hard from one place to another. Most of the best base stage matches I've ever shot didn't have a single step in them that was faster than what I would call a brisk walk. Now, if you're shooting hard as hell and you have to run 40 yards up a gully, yeah, just run up the gully. There's no training that. You just run as hard as you can. What really counts in movement is you are getting your body moving as you start exiting position while you're still firing shots, and you are starting to shoot while your body is settling before you're actually all the way set up in the next position relative to how hard the targets are. You're even if there is a spot where you need to plant both feet to take some hard-ish shots, if you can keep your upper body slightly moving as you're doing that and you don't have to restart all of that momentum again, those are the places where you actually save time from a strictly movement standpoint. Then, of course, there is shooting on the move, which I trained by shooting on the move. You can train that in your basement by putting your dot on a target and literally just walking around your basement and figuring out how up or down you need to be if you isolate your core relative to your legs. There is kind of like ideal height where you can get too low and nothing makes sense anymore. You can get too high and everything gets really bouncy. And just learning how aggressively you can walk around while still keeping your dot on the target. Those are two slightly different things, and they need to be addressed differently. So although they're both movement, I don't think they really fall under the same umbrella.
Fun fact, a good friend of mine from work who is, we'll say he's a test engineer, he went hard at the movement thing. He actually dry fired on the treadmill. He had the dry fire on the treadmill phase. And it worked very well for him.
Dude, I'm about it. Hey, sure.
But what really stuck out there, like the thing about movement, and I got this from did you ever watch the Noveski shooting team DVDs?
Oh, dude, I got it on the shelf upstairs, man.
Dude, I was at my parents' for Christmas. I found them in a box of stuff. Like, I want to watch them again. But one of the things that really stuck out for me, that when they were talking about shotgun reloads, is they're like, you don't have to run any faster than you can load your shotgun. So he said, it doesn't pay for you to run super fast and then stand there loading your shotgun. You just have to get there in time for you to click the last shell and come up onto a target. And so that's one of the things when we're talking about movement, like you only can move as fast, you only need to move as fast as you can be ready to shoot in the next position. So if you need to do a reload or you need to transition a gun or something like that, the faster you can do it, that is good. But a lot of people go super fast and then they arrive there and they're not ready yet. So they almost like fumble around flat-footed because they weren't ready to be there yet. So if in your mind, if you can, like Adam was saying, blend positions together, it's not that I need to get there as fast as I can. It's just I need to get there as fast as I can be ready to shoot. Now, I need to be ready to shoot as soon as possible. The faster I can do that, the faster I need to move. But it's better to arrive in position ready to shoot than to get there super quick and then stand there flat-footed doing some stuff. I consider movement to be on the short list of things that I'm really aggressively trying to work on. I actually am starting a program it's a pilot program that my friend Jake at Inex Performance is putting on. There's 3 GMs that are trying it out first before it's ready for the world. But I approached Jake specifically because that is what he teaches. That's his thing. And I'm like, hey, I really want to get better at this. So I am actively seeking improvement on movement. To date, what has done it for me so far, and something that I would consider for folks, I think one of the best things you can do for your shooting is to be active on a local scene, if you have a local scene. And not necessarily just winning. Like once you get to a point where you're comfortable with how you're going to do, maybe you hit a ceiling on who you can beat, who you cannot beat. Maybe you're the hottie hot dog in your small pond. But like at my local match, I'll say, because I know they listen, so I'll say there's about 4 of us who could win any given Tuesday. All right. And depending on who shows up, who doesn't show up, or who's in what division, like just going to win the match wasn't the best training value for me. So sometimes, and recently this is what I did on movement, I was just going to force movement as much as possible. So like the theme for a lot of my shooting is contribute something to leaving as soon as possible. And so in doing some of that, I would almost like, even though given the option, like shooting the match to win the match, the smart play was to stand here and shoot the stuff. But if I could shoot the stuff on the move, or I could try to shoot one target while leaving, I would force myself to do that. In a smaller scale match where I'm not necessarily super emotionally connected to the outcome, but it's match conditions. Match conditions are very hard to replicate in practice, in training. So sometimes smaller scale matches are good places to practice things under match conditions. And so movement being one of those, I try to, in some of those situations, force movement when it's not necessarily advisable from a strategy position, but it would give me live reps under match conditions for something I might not have a choice about at a bigger match that I do care about. And then if you can shoot a swinger on the move. Then oh, I can shoot 3 targets spread this far apart with 1 foot falling out, or to do the classic like falling out shot. Like, well, can I get that or not? Will I have enough time or not? Well, you got to try it a few times. And so best not to learn it when you really are emotionally connected to the outcome. I use smaller scale matches to push on some of that stuff sometimes, and sometimes picking the harder option to try and get out of my comfort zone on some of that stuff. And movement is a great example of that.
So one of my favorite things I've ever seen at a match, there was a stage, there was a super hard lean with a wide open piece of paper, and some of us faster folks were just running, jumping out of position, and just shooting this thing completely in the air. And there was one dude on the squad that, was kind of a newer shooter who didn't quite understand how the rules worked. And so he ran, jumped out of the position, landed out of bounds, jumped again, and shot his 2 shots. And so his thought was if nothing was touching out of bounds, like that was the rule, because he didn't actually see what was going on. It was so goddamn funny. Like just leveled the entire squad. Like everybody was on the floor laughing, and this dude had no idea what had happened. It was so good. But anyways, one of my favorite. Go ahead.
That reminds me of one time. So this one time we were doing a shotgun match, and this was later in my club match directing career where I was a little burned out. And so it's like, all right, well, we're going to do the shotgun juggle run over here. So we're going to spray paint the start box over here. And there's a spray paint fault line over here. This is one of my favorite stories. This one goes out to you, Brent. And so we all shoot this stage. You start standing in the box or whatever and you shoot this stuff. You run over there, shoot that stuff, and run over there, shoot that stuff. And he started in the box. He ran way over the line, like 10 feet over the fault line, painted on the ground, and shot a bunch of stuff and whatever. And we're like, dude, you got like a bajillion procedurals. You ran over the line. But he's like, what line? We're like the orange line.
He's colorblind,
he's like,
isn't he?
What orange line? I'm colorblind as shit. I can't see that. And we're like,
that's
what?
Awesome.
And then we're like, well, how did you know where to start? Or he's like, I started standing in the hole like everybody else. There's like a little hole, a little divot in the lawn. Anyway.
Oh, that's good. So to get back on topic, the drill that I actually use to practice kind of like blending positions together, super simple drill. All the things I do are super simple drills. Static steel down range, something in the neighborhood of 10, 15 yards. Wall, full length, 8-foot wall. You can also use 2 sticks 8 feet apart, perpendicular to the back berm on the 180. Paper target on the left berm, paper target on the right berm. Draw from one corner, shoot the steel, shoot one paper target backing out, turn around, shoot the other paper target on the way in, and then as you crest the corner of the wall, shoot the static steel downrange again. That is a fantastic drill to work on blending positions together because you get a hard exit on steel, you get a wide transition to paper, you get paper on the way out of a position, you get paper on the way into a position, and then you get a hard transition to static steel in the back. You practice moving around walls, you practice not overshooting positions. It's a great little drill, and it's 6 shots. It's awesome.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the list of questions that I have accrued for this particular episode.
You did it. You made it through a question episode. Good job, Maxwell.
And this one's super long, but also kind of giving folks an idea of, maybe some topics you'd like us to dive deeper into, or topics, or maybe you got a different question and we didn't quite address your question the way you wanted. We are approachable out there. Adam is Adam Reiser on everything, anywhere. Just Google Adam Reiser. You'll find him. He's the short one. And I'm 3Gun Amax or 3Gun _ Amax pretty much everywhere. We do also have, I should actually look up what is the podcast email, but we do actually have an email as well that I haven't checked it yet, but I promise now that you all have heard this, I will start checking it for your questions. But if you have something that you would like us to talk about, this is really a dialogue, and we're here to put out information that you are interested in. So get a hold of us. Let us know what you want to hear, and maybe we'll do a show on it. But with that said, Adam, if you are finished, this is On the Perf podcast, and we'll see you guys next time.